story was told of a monk who took a vow of silence. And after several months, his instructor asked him, "Do you have anything to say?" He said, "Food, bad." So he was silent for a couple more months, and his instructor asked again, "Do you have anything to say?" And he said, "Bed, hard." Several months go by. His instructor asked a question again, "Do you have anything to say?" And he said, "I quit." And the instructor responded, "I don't doubt it. All you've done is complain." Complaining is easy to do, isn't it? It doesn't take a lot of effort. You know, if you want to make a list of things you could complain about, I think that list would probably fill up a lot quicker than your blessings that you might count. Because we all feel reasons for complaining. We all feel ineffective in various ways, or that things aren't working out well in our lives. In Numbers, the 21st chapter, as was read a few moments ago, the Israelites are complaining. As a result of their complaining, they became their own worst enemy. As a matter of fact, the Israelites didn't really realize how fortunate they were. If you turn with me to the book of Deuteronomy, in chapter 1, there's a fascinating verse that's found in Deuteronomy chapter 1 that I'd like us to think about. Deuteronomy chapter 1, verse 2. Horeb was Mount Sinai. It's where God gave Israel the Ten Commandments and the laws. The text says there are 11 days' journey from Horeb by the way of Mount Seir unto Kadesh Barnea. Do you realize that Kadesh Barnea is the place where they sent out the 12 spies into the Promised Land? This means that the trip from Mount Sinai to the Promised Land should have taken 11 days. But Israel was their own worst enemy. Their murmuring and complaining and rebellion against God turned that 11-day trip into 40 years. What a waste. What a waste. 40 years. We know the reason for this. For in Numbers, the 14th chapter, God explained why the 40 years came to be. In Numbers, the 14th chapter, and verse 25, God told Israel, "Tomorrow turn you and get you into the wilderness by the way of the Red Sea." And the Lord spake unto Moses and unto Aaron and said, "How long shall I bear with this evil congregation, which murmur against me? I have heard the murmurings of the children of Israel, which they murmur against me. Say unto them, As truly as I live, saith the Lord, as ye have spoken, and mine ear, so will I do to you. Your carcasses shall fall in this wilderness, and all that were numbered of you according to your whole number, from 20 years old and upward, which have murmured against me. Doubtless ye shall not come into the land concerning which I swear to make you dwell therein, except for Caleb and Joshua. But your little ones, which you said should be a prey, them will I bring in, and they shall know the land which ye have despised. But as for you, your carcasses, they shall fall in the wilderness, and your children shall wander in the wilderness 40 years, and bury your whoredoms until your carcasses be wasted in the wilderness. After the number of the days in which you search the land, even 40 days, 12 spies searched the land of Canaan for 40 days. God says, each day for a year shall ye bear your iniquities, even 40 years, and ye shall know my breach of promise. 11-day journey turned into a 40-year wandering in the wilderness. But God took care of these people. God's provisions were many. If we look at the book of Deuteronomy, you turn to the 8th chapter, you see a list of some of the things that God did for them. In Deuteronomy 8 and verse 2, thou shalt remember all the way which the Lord thy God led thee 40 years in the wilderness, to humble thee and to prove thee to know what was in thine heart, whether thou wouldest keep his commandments or not. And he humbled thee and suffered thee to hunger, and fed thee with manna, which you knew not, neither did thy fathers know, that he might know that man does not live by bread only, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of the Lord. Thy raiment waxeth not old upon thee, neither did thy foot swell these 40 years. The journeying in the wilderness was a miraculous one. From the very time they left Mount Sinai, they had no water, and they complained to Moses, no water. God told Moses to fetch them water from a rock. The water continued with them these 40 years, so that they always had something to drink. Manna was provided when the Israelites complained they had nothing to eat. They were traveling through the wilderness of sin, and that wilderness was basically uninhabitable. It was sand and rock and dry, parched ground. Very little vegetation. There was no way that they were going to survive this journey, except for the provisions that God made for them. But notice it says that even their feet didn't swell from walking, and the soles of their shoes never wore out, and their clothes never got old. That's not normal. I know my clothes fall apart pretty quick, and my shoes go bad too. God protected them in a miraculous fashion. He provided for them food and drink and all the things they needed to make this journey. This is referred to again in the 29th chapter of Deuteronomy as they come near the close of their travels. For in Deuteronomy chapter 29 and verse 5, God says, I have led you 40 years in the wilderness. Your clothes are not waxing old upon you, and the sole and thy shoe is not waxing old upon your foot. You've not eaten bread, neither have you drunk wine or strong drink, that you might know that I am the Lord your God. It's interesting to notice that the manna which God provided for them later would be used by Jesus Christ to refer to that bread from God. And in John 6 chapter, he would say, I am the bread of God, come down to give life. And it's on that occasion that we read the information about the bread that God provided. And that is, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God. That was about the manna. God fed the people, but the people had to obey God. They needed not only to have health, he provided that, but they also needed to have spiritual health. And therein they failed. And so the bread became a symbol of God's provision and his blessing. Later, when we read about the using of the bread in the Lord's Supper, we read that that bread is something that symbolizes the body of Jesus Christ. Christ is that bread. His sacrifice was made for us that we might live. And when Jesus taught his disciples to pray, you remember he taught them, give us this day our daily bread. Well, back in Numbers chapter 11, when the people gathered the manna every morning early as it fell with the dew, they were to gather it every day except for Friday, and then they gathered it up for the Sabbath, which was holy unto the Lord. So that the expression, give us this day our daily bread, refers back to the daily gathering of the manna. But in Numbers 21, after God had done all this for Israel, notice the people were much discouraged. Historians tell us that the part of the country they were traveling die in the wilderness. There is no bread, there is no water, and our souls loathe this like bread. Notice they say, we don't have any bread, but we've got this old stuff. They didn't appreciate what God provided. And so they complained. They complained because they didn't like what God was doing in their lives. Many people complain about that today. Sometimes even we as Christians become dissatisfied and discouraged and think to ourselves, well, if God was really for me, this wouldn't be working out like this. If God was really my Father in heaven, surely these difficulties wouldn't be falling on me. But as we're going to see from a lesson this morning, the snakes still crawl at night. The snakes are still there. And that's exactly what happened. Verse 6 of Numbers chapter 21. And the Lord sent fiery serpents among the people, and they bit the people, and much people of Israel died. The fiery serpents were unusual creatures because the word fiery means red light, copper color. I've often thought growing up in Tennessee maybe it was copperhead. Scholars say some kind of viper perhaps. But they were the color of copper. And that's interesting because God tells Moses to erect a brazen serpent, which of course would be copper color. But be that as it may, God sent serpents among the people. Now I'd like for us to realize that the serpents are the result of sin. The serpents are retribution for Israel's sinfulness. Serpents are in the world because of sin. In Revelation 20, we read that Satan, that old serpent, the devil, is the one who set all this loose on the earth. He was the one who tempted man in the garden, who caused man to fall by disobedience to God. And because of that sin, death entered into the world. Romans 6 and verse 23, Paul says, the wages of sin is death. In 1 Corinthians 15, in the closing verses, the Apostle Paul says, death, where is thy sting? And then he says, the sting of death is sin. Sin is what brings the serpent back. It's what brings the snakes out. We look around our world and we see all the things that are wrong and all the things that need to be fixed and all the things that are wicked and all the things that are corrupt and all the things that are hurting people and destroying people. Almost all of those things, if not all those things, are because of that snake. Satan is the snake. Satan is the serpent. And he is fiery. He will burn. He will burn us eternally. And so when Israel sinned against God, the snakes came out. So what's man going to do? Well, the Israelites cried out to God and said, oh, help, help, we've sinned. We've rebelled against God. Please take the snakes away. But notice what God did. Verse 8. The Lord said to Moses, make a fiery serpent and set it on a pole. And it shall come to pass that everyone that's bitten, when he looks upon it, shall live. God did not remove the snakes. The snakes were there because of Israel's sin. God's not going to just take sin out of the picture. Sin is always there. Sin is always possible. Even for those who are Christians, we can sin. 1 John chapter 1, verse 10. We say we have no sin, we lie and do not the truth. All have sinned and come short of the glory of God. And that's why the snakes are loose. That's why the bite is so bad. That's why the world is in such a mess. That's why our lives get in such a mess. It's sin. Well, what's God going to do? He's not going to remove the snakes. They're there because of sin. But he tells Moses to make a copper-colored serpent and put it on a pole. Now that's a strange thing. You know, that's one of the wonderful things about Doesn't matter what it is. God can come up with most anything in any way and ask it of us. But the important thing is God provides the way. Here's the plan. He's not removing the snakes. The snakes are still biting people. People are still dying. God says, lift up that serpent on a pole. Well, what world is that going to do? Well, turn with me to the Gospel of John. Chapter 3. Jesus is going to explain it for us. In John chapter 3, beginning at verse 10, Jesus is here in a conversation with Nicodemus, talking to him about the new birth of the water and the Spirit, and without that new birth, he said, you can't enter the kingdom of God. And in verse 10, he says to Nicodemus, art thou a master of Israel, and knowest not these things? Verily, verily, I say unto thee, we speak that we do know, and testify that we have seen, and ye receive not our witness. If I have told you earthly things, and you believe not, how shall you believe if I tell you heavenly things? And no man has ascended up in heaven, but he that came down from heaven, even the Son of Man which is in heaven. Now notice, Jesus is having to relate physical things to Nicodemus so he can understand the new birth and how it is he can be saved. In doing this, Jesus turns to Moses and the snake. Verse 14. And he says, and as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have eternal life. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. God sent his Son so that the snake bites could be cured. God sent his Son so that we might be saved. But notice that God lifted his Son up like a snake on a pole. And I think it's interesting. Jesus bore the sins of mankind, and therefore he took on the form of the serpent. He took on the form of flesh and blood so that we might be able to look upon him and find eternal salvation. But now, if you turn with me to Hebrews, the 10th chapter, you can see how the inspired writer explains this process. Let's begin back in Hebrews, the 2nd chapter. We'll start there. In Hebrews chapter 2, beginning in verse 2, the word spoken by angels was steadfast, and every transgression and disobedience received a just recompense of reward. How shall we escape if we neglect so great salvation, which at the first began to be spoken by the Lord, and was confirmed unto us by them that heard him, God bearing them witness with signs and wonders and divers miracles and gifts of the Holy Spirit, according to his own will. Notice in verse 7, God made him a little lower than the angels, thou crownest him with glory and honor, and did set him over the works of thy hands. They have put all things in subjection under his feet, and that he hath put all things under his feet, he left nothing that is not put under him. But now we see not yet all things put under him. But we see Jesus, who was made a little lower than the angels for the suffering of death, crowned with glory and honor, that he, by the grace of God, should taste death for every man. So, Jesus, the Son of God, was sent by God to The people who looked upon the serpent were healed. And it's interesting. When you look at the cases of conversion in the book of Acts, you find that those who were saved were told to believe on the Lord Jesus Christ. Look upon Him, believe on Him, trust on Him. So that in Acts the 16th chapter, Paul and Silas tell the Philippian jailer in verse 31, believe on the Lord Jesus Christ, and thou shalt be saved in thy house. And spake unto him the word of the Lord, and to all that were in his house. And he took them the same hour of the night, and washed their stripes, and he was baptized, he and all his straightway. And this is where the Lord Jesus Christ and the new birth come together. They believed on the Lord Jesus Christ and what was preached about him, and as a result, looking upon Christ upon the cross, they then were baptized. That was, they had their sins washed away in the blood of Christ. So salvation comes to us through Christ, suspended at Calvary. We go back to Numbers chapter 21 and we see that it was only by looking at the serpent that they lived. I think it's interesting. It doesn't say that they felt real good. It doesn't say they weren't still hurting from snake bite. It says they lived. You know, the consequences of sin are going to happen. The Old Testament speaks in the book of Proverbs, chapter 23, verse 32. And the wise man said, the way of the transgressor is hard. God didn't remove the snakes, and He's not going to remove the consequences of our sin. There are people today who are living with the consequences of sin that they have committed years ago, and things aren't getting any better. They're still suffering from those things. I've known individuals who got into drug use and other things that contaminated their minds and left them not what they used to be. I visited with a young man in Florida one time who'd been smoking pot, and he got hold of some that was laced with something else, maybe PCP. So I went to talk to him. He was behind the garbage truck, throwing garbage in it. And I started to talk to him, and he couldn't complete a sentence. He wasn't able to reason. He couldn't explain who he was or what had happened to him. He was reaping the consequences of sin. The sting of a snake bite. It can stay with you. You can have ramifications from that. But notice, God said, if they look on the serpent, they will live. Life may still be miserable. They're still going to suffer consequences. They're still going to have difficulty. They shall live. And that's what Jesus brought to us. That's what Jesus brought into our world. The ability to live spiritually when we were dead in trespasses and sins. That's why in 1 John chapter 1, John reminds us as Christians that we all sin. We all make mistakes. And every time we sin, there is consequences to that sin. Every time we disobey God, we end up having to suffer somehow. God doesn't forget our sin. But He sent His Son to hang on that cross, and we can believe on Him and trust Him and obey Him, and we can be made alive. What a wonderful blessing that is. And there's no reason to complain and groan